Introducing the Open Palm Podcast, hosted by Jerome Shaw. Available today on your favorite podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.fm, and many more. The Open Palm Podcast, where the host engages his listeners with inspirational messages, motivating themes, and thought-provoking ideas. Topics include: make more mistakes, how much is your value, don't get right, get going, learning to let go, excellence is a habit, and more. Binge listen today. Subscribe today. It's getting excellent ratings. That's the Open Palm Podcast, hosted by Jerome Shaw. You can also find it on YouTube. Make sure you share it with your social networks and connect on Twitter and Instagram at Jerome Shaw. That's the Open Palm Podcast with Jerome Shaw. Available today on your favorite podcasting platforms. Go listen, download, and subscribe now.
The morning breeze has secrets to show you. Do not go back to sleep. When you look at a dog, or a cat, or a bird, what do you see? Ask yourself, what do you see? I ask myself this. I woke up this morning and it was like any time that I've ever woken when I was young, a teenager, from a nightmare or a bad dream. But I don't often remember my dreams. I stopped myself just now. I almost said that I don't often dream, but I believe that we all dream. But some of us just don't recall or remember our dreams. So there were times in my life when I thought that I just didn't dream, but I really just didn't remember my dreams. So, as I've been opening up more and more to these different energies, I feel like I've been gaining different awakenings. And I was awakened this morning, startled from a dream in which I can remember myself being in a room by myself, thinking that no one else was there. But it was funny, I had this feeling of hunger, that I was just so hungry. And I could remember seeing a cat, small cat, not particularly a baby cat, but a small cat nonetheless. There was a black cat with white paws. And it came up to me. And I can remember my hunger overtaking me. And I bit this cat's paw. But in the dream, I bit the cat's paw clean off. And I don't even remember what it tasted like. It didn't matter. It didn't matter why I did it. I did it because I could. Because even in the dream world, we take certain perceptions and things with us. Sometimes we do things in the dream world that we may or may not do outside of the dream world, but because it's a dream, it's just different. So I bit off this cat's paw, and immediately I start hearing this blood-curdling cry from another cat. And I realized that there's a cat in the corner of the room who was just crying in anguish and agony. And I walk over to it and observe it. And I realize that this is the mother of the cat whose paw I bit. I don't know how I knew this, but it was just a feeling of knowing, just knowing deep within myself that this is the mother of that cat. And that cat was just screaming, it was wailing, it was just crying out in pain because I had bit off the paw of this other cat. And I can remember this morning just waking up from that dream, and upon recollecting the events, tears started to come down my eyes. Why am I telling you this? Well, if you've ever had a pet, or if you've ever taken care of an animal, if you have ever domesticated an animal, such as a dog or a cat, and had them in your home, you would know that it's a tough thing to bury an animal. I've had to bury 2 cats. I've had several dogs. So I understand how it feels to lose something that you love, or even just a life form that you've been in the company of for so long. And I just realized in that moment when I woke up from this dream and tears came down my eyes, I realized how cruel I had been to animals in my life. That even though I wasn't on the list of comparison, I wasn't an animal killer or a serial animal, abuser, but I have definitely lashed out and just mistreated life forms due to my lack of education, my lack of knowledge when it came to what these animals are. And really my point is, one time my wife pointed out years ago that our dog Marlo, she said, I believe that Marlo is a real person. She would point at Marlo, she'd be like, look at him smiling, look at how he smiles. There's no way he's not real, right? There's no way that this dog is not a real person. And we would both laugh together. It would just be funny to us. But she was right. She was right. And I'm just now realizing how right she really was. There was a time when I was talking to my friend Lamb, and he told me, Jerome, what is that? And he pointed over to a bird that was outside the bookstore we sat in. And the bird was just in its bird's nest taking care of other birds, I suppose. And he asked me, what is that? He pointed to it. And I said, it's a bird. And he said, how do you know it's a bird? How do you know? And I said, because that's what we call it. We call it a bird. And he said something that always stuck with me. He said, Jerome, you don't know what that is. You don't know what that is. That could be your dad. That could be your granddad. You don't know what that is. And this statement, in that moment, hit me like a runaway train. Like, it hit me at a time when I was questioning so much. But I never forgot how I felt in that moment. A feeling of disbelief, of confusion, of wanting to know more, wanting to know what was it that he had figured out? What was it that he had been enlightened to? What is he talking about? What do you mean? Isn't that a bird? Everybody knows it's a bird. But here is someone who is questioning everything that I know about what I think I know. Just because we call it a bird doesn't mean that it's a bird. We think it's a bird because we've always called it a bird, but could it be so much more? We think it's a cat because we've always called it a cat. Could it be so much more? We think it's a dog because we play with it, we play fetch, and it woofs like a dog, it barks like a dog, runs like a dog, right? It must be a dog. What if it isn't a dog? What if it's so much more? What if these life forms that we are among on this planet, that we cohabitate this planet, because it's not about the ecosystem, like Ralph Smart said, it's about the ecosystem. What if we are connected in ways that we don't even realize? Everything is connected. And when my tears came down my face this morning from the dream of that cat, I felt a deep desire within myself to never want to eat another life form again. To never want to eat something that has a life of its own, that has emotions of its own. An animal, a species that can hurt, that can feel pain. I felt as though I didn't want to be a contributor of the loss of life anymore. And so I tell you this, just so you can examine and just evaluate and think, just think about things differently. If you are listening to this podcast, I already know that you are an open-minded individual. Otherwise, you wouldn't be listening to this, and you definitely wouldn't have gotten this far. So I applaud you. I congratulate you for not only taking the time to listen, but actually getting this far in this episode and expanding your mind to the possibility that perhaps things could be different than we think. These days, I feel like I am deprogramming to reprogram. I am unlearning to relearn. But I thank you for listening. This has been an episode with Jerome Shaw on TOP. That is the Open Palm Podcast here in Columbia, South Carolina. The Open Palm means harmony with the world, understanding our place in the world, using our skills accordingly, and greeting the world with an open palm instead of a closed fist. I pray that you received an encouraging message from this episode today, letting you know the importance of all life forms on this planet, not just us. That we may not be superior or inferior, but we are just another life form. So many years I believed that because I was able to think and do things that seemed more intelligent than other life forms, other life beings, that I was more important than them. So many times I had thought that I was superior just because I was a human being. And now all of that is changing. If I am a spiritual being having a human experience, and perhaps that is a spiritual being having a dog experience, or a spiritual being having a cat experience, a spiritual being having a bird experience. You can see how this could be puzzling to someone who is not expanding in the ways that you are. Share this episode with a like-minded individual who, like you, is learning and growing and becoming their greatest version. Pay this message forward, as I don't believe these messages are heard not nearly enough. People have asked how they can support the podcast. Well, you can support it by becoming a supporter, opening your browser to anchor.fm/jshaw. Supporting it there is much appreciated. Or you could become a patron at patreon.com/Jerome Shaw. As always, my friend, have a blessed day or night. Wherever you are, take care.